Some of the views expressed on the Mormon Channel are solely for the education and inspiration of our audience and may not represent the official position of the Church.
I'm Nathan Wright, and you're listening to the Mormon Channel of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Colonizer, territorial governor, and president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Brigham Young was born in Whittingham, Vermont on June 1, 1801, the ninth of 11 children born to John Young and Abigail Nabby Howe. When Brigham was 3 years old, the family moved to central New York State and later to Smyrna, New York. Brigham helped clear land for farming, trapped fur animals, fished, built sheds and dug cellars, and helped with planting, cultivating, and harvesting crops. He also cared for his mother, who was seriously ill with tuberculosis. Brigham had very few advantages in his youth. Shoes were considered a luxury. One day, by some fortunate circumstances, he obtained a pair of shoes. Brigham was so used to being barefoot, he saved the shoes for special occasions. When he went to church, he carried them until he was near the gathering, put them on during the meeting, and took them off as soon as it was over. Brigham Young's formal schooling consisted of 11 days of instruction under a traveling schoolmaster. His mother taught him to read.
I had no opportunity for letters, but I had the privilege of picking up brush, chopping down trees, rolling logs, and working among the roots, getting my shins, feet, and toes bruised. I learned how to make bread, wash the dishes, milk the cows, and make butter. Those are about all the advantages I gained in my youth. I learned how to economize, for my father had to do it. Brigham Young.
At the age of 14, he lost his noble and splendid mother in death. She had been his mainstay and support, and throughout his future years, he always spoke of her with the greatest reverence.
Of my mother, she that bore me, I can say no better ever lived in the world than she was. While she lived, she taught her children to honor the name of the Father and Son, and to reverence the Holy Book. Brigham Young, Sermon on August 15, 1852.
After the death of his mother, Brigham was farmed out among the neighbors, and from that time on, he made his way alone. He had already learned to work and soon found that he could take care of himself. He became an apprentice carpenter, painter, and glazier in nearby Auburn. Over the next 5 years in Auburn, he assisted in building its first marketplace, the prison, the theological seminary, and the home of Squire William Brown, later occupied by William H. Seward, a governor of New York, who also served as Abraham Lincoln's Secretary of State. As a master carpenter, Brigham built door fittings, louvered attic windows, and carved ornate mantelpieces for many homes. Many old homes in the region to this day have chairs, desks, staircases, doorways, and mantelpieces made by Brigham Young. Brigham left Auburn in the spring of 1823 to work in Port Byron, New York, where he repaired furniture and painted canal boats. He developed a device for mixing paints and turned out many chairs, tables, cupboards, and doors. He also helped organize the local forensic and oratorical society. At Port Byron, Brigham joined the Methodist Reformed Church, although he said he never became too enthusiastic about it, as there was not sufficient power in it to stir his soul. On October 5, 1824, at the age of 23, Brigham married Miriam Angeline Works. They initially established a home in Haydenville, Aurelius Township, where they joined the Methodist Church. Two of his friends at the time were Henry Wells, founder of the Wells Fargo Express Company, and Isaac Singer, inventor of the Singer sewing machine. Near the end of 1828, Brigham took his family to Mendon, Monroe County, New York, to be near his father and other relatives. At Menden, Miriam gave birth to a second daughter, Violet, but contracted chronic tuberculosis and became a semi-invalid. Brigham prepared the meals, dressed the children, cleaned the house, and carried Miriam to a rocking chair in front of the fireplace in the morning, then back to bed in the evening. In Menden, he built a shop and mill, made and repaired furniture, and put in window panes, doorways, staircases, and fireplace mantels. In April of 1830, Samuel Smith, brother of Joseph Smith, passed through Menden while on a missionary journey to distribute copies of the Book of Mormon. He left a copy with Brigham's brother Phineas, an itinerant preacher for the Reformed Methodist Church. Phineas was favorably impressed with the book and lent it to his father, then to his sister Fanny, who gave it to Brigham. Though impressed, Brigham nevertheless counseled caution. "Wait a little while," he said. "I want to see whether good common sense is manifest." After nearly 2 years of investigation, Brigham, moved by the testimony of a Mormon elder, Eleazar Miller, was baptized on April 15th, 1832.
We returned home, about 2 miles, the weather being cold and snowy, and before my clothes were dry on my back, he laid his hands on me and ordained me an elder. Brigham Young.
From this day on, until the day of his death, Brigham Young's activities were devoted almost wholly to the advancement of the church. All of Brigham's immediate family was also baptized, and they all remained loyal Latter-day Saints throughout their lives. Miriam, who also joined, lived only until September 8th, 1832. 1 week after his baptism, Brigham gave his first sermon.
After I was baptized, I wanted to thunder and roar out the gospel to the nations. It burned in my bones like fire pent up. So I commenced to preach. Nothing would satisfy me but to cry abroad in the world what the Lord was doing in the latter days. Brigham Young.
Brigham felt the impulse to cry abroad so strongly that he enlisted the assistance of Violet and Heber C. Kimball to care for his daughters, and abandoned his trade to devote himself wholeheartedly to building the kingdom of God. That fall, after Miriam's death, Brigham, his brother Joseph, and Heber Kimball traveled to Kirtland, Ohio, where he first met the 26-year-old prophet Joseph Smith. Invited to evening prayer in the Smith home, Brigham was moved by the Spirit and spoke in tongues, the first speaking in tongues witnessed by the prophet. In 1834, he was present at a meeting in Kirtland held in a log cabin, which Wilford Woodruff described as so small that it could have held perhaps only 20 people. Many of those present later became prominent leaders and members of the 12. There, Brigham Young began to comprehend the vast outlook of the prophet Joseph Smith. Brigham Young bore a 5-minute testimony on what he saw as the future of the church. Others did the same.
I thank you for your observations and feelings. You know no more concerning the destinies of this church and kingdom than a babe upon his mother's lap. You don't comprehend it. This church will fill North and South America. It will fill the world. Joseph Smith.
Among those whom Brigham met in Kirtland was Mary Ann Angel, a native of Seneca, Ontario County, New York, who had worked in a factory in Providence, Rhode Island, until her conversion to the church and her move to Kirtland. Brigham married her on February 18, 1834. She looked after Brigham's 2 daughters by Miriam, and subsequently had 6 children of her own. In 1834, Brigham and his brother Joseph served with Zion's Camp, a small army of saints led by Joseph Smith that marched from Ohio to Missouri in the summer of 1834 to assist those driven from their homes by hostile mobs. Brigham regarded the difficult trek as superb education and later called it the starting point of my knowing how to lead Israel. Conviction, dedication, and potential more than accomplishments qualified Brigham Young to be ordained a member of the church's original Quorum of the 12 Apostles, on February 14, 1835. The 12 were a traveling high council, charged to take the gospel to all nations, kindred tongues, and people. They presided not at home, but abroad, serving as the leading quorum in the church after the first presidency. Each summer, Brigham undertook proselytizing missions in the East. Each winter, he cared for his family and helped build up Kirtland. He helped construct the Kirtland Temple, attended the School of the Prophets, participated in the Pentecostal outpouring that accompanied the dedication of the Kirtland Temple in the spring of 1836, and engaged in church-related business activities assigned to him by Joseph Smith. When the Kirtland community became divided over Joseph Smith's leadership, Brigham Young's strong defense of the prophet so enraged the critics that Brigham had to flee Kirtland for his safety on December 22, 1837. He and his family made their way to far west Caldwell County, Missouri. By the summer of 1838, most of the Kirtland faithful, including Brigham and his family, had moved to Caldwell County in northern Missouri. Growing numbers of Latter-day Saint arrivals rekindled antagonisms with old settlers, and violence erupted. Disarmed, violated, and robbed of most of their holdings, the Latter-day Saints were driven from the state. With Joseph Smith, his brother Hiram, Sidney Rigdon, and other church leaders imprisoned, Brigham Young, then the senior member of the Quorum of the 12, directed the evacuation of the saints to Quincy and other Illinois communities. To ensure that members without teams and wagons would not be left behind, he and other members of the Committee on Removal drew up the Missouri Covenant. All who signed it agreed to make their resources available to remove every person to safety who wished to leave the state of Missouri. There were between 8,000 and 12,000 exiles. In the spring of 1839, Joseph Smith designated Commerce, Illinois, renamed Nauvoo, the new central gathering place of the saints. Brigham's family was hardly settled in the area by the fall of 1839. Before Brigham had had time to construct a home or establish himself, he began preparations to depart for a mission to England, as he and the other members of the 12 had been commanded. Even though he was ill and penniless, he was obedient to the revelations of his Heavenly Father.
President Brigham Young left his home at Montrose to start his mission to England. He was so sick that he was unable to go to the Mississippi, a distance of 30 rods, without assistance. After he had crossed the river, he rode behind Israel Barlow on his horse to my house, where he continued sick until the 18th. He left his wife sick, with a babe only 10 days old, and all his children were sick and unable to wait upon each other. Not one soul of them was able to go to the well for a pail of water, and they were without a second suit to their backs, for the mob in Missouri had taken nearly all they had. Thus did Brigham Young go forth on his mission to England, sick, penniless, in threadbare clothing. But within his breast was the heart of a lion, a determination to do or to die. Heber C. Kimball.
President Young and his companions finally docked at Liverpool in April. As Quorum President, Brigham directed their work in Britain during an astonishing year in which they baptized between 7,000 and 8,000 converts, printed and distributed 5,000 copies of the Book of Mormon, 3,000 hymn books, 1,500 volumes of the Millennial Star, 50,000 tracts, established a shipping agency, and assisted nearly 1,000 to emigrate to Nauvoo. Brigham traveled to the principal cities in England and took time to visit Buckingham Palace, St. Paul's Cathedral, Westminster Abbey, the Lake District, factory towns, the potteries, museums, art galleries, and of course, the homes of converts, both rich and poor. In later years, he often commented on what he had seen and learned in England. Back in Nauvoo, Brigham was given the assignment of directing the 12 in their supervision of missionary work, the purchase of lands and settling of immigrants, and various construction projects. Along with others, Brigham was also taught the principle of plural marriage. He accepted it after much reluctance and considerable thought and prayer. With Mary Ann's consent, he married Lucy Ann Decker Seeley in June 1842, and later other plural wives. He was among the first 7 persons to receive the full temple endowment at the hands of the prophet Joseph Smith on May 4, 1842. Later, with Mary Ann, he participated with others who had received temple ordinances in sessions during which Joseph Smith gave additional instructions on gospel principles. Because Brigham Young was now the president of the quorum, which came second only to the first presidency in authority and responsibility, he became increasingly immersed in the affairs of the rapidly expanding community. As if in foreboding of his impending death, Joseph Smith gave Brigham and the other members of the 12 a dramatic charge to bear off this kingdom, telling them they now had all the keys and instruction needed to do so successfully. In May 1844, Brigham and other apostles left on summer missions. While they were gone, events in Nauvoo deteriorated. Joseph Smith was arrested and on June 27th was killed with his brother Hiram when a mob stormed the jail at Carthage, Illinois, where they were being held. Brigham began to hear rumors of the murders while in the Boston area, but did not hear definite word of the assassination until July 16th in Peterborough, New Hampshire. Brigham walked from Peterborough to Boston, a distance of 70 miles. Waiting for him was Wilford Woodruff, who had also received the news. They went to the home of a Latter-day Saint in Boston, went upstairs, closed the door of the bedroom and sat down, and then, for the first time, they wept.
He looked as if everything that was dear to him on this earth had been taken away. Brigham Young's daughter, upon seeing him in Salem, Massachusetts.
He and his companions immediately rushed back to Nauvoo, arriving August 6th. On August 8th, Brigham and the 12 were sustained by the membership to lead the church. Thursday, August 8, 1844, stands out as one of the most important days in the history of the Restoration. On that day, a miracle occurred before the body of the church. Brigham Young was transfigured before the people. A special meeting to choose a guardian was held that morning at 10 o'clock in the Grove. Sidney Rigdon spoke for an hour and a half about his desires to be guardian of the church. Brigham Young told the audience that he would rather have spent a month mourning the dead prophet than so quickly attend the business of appointing a new shepherd. While he was speaking, he was miraculously transfigured before the people. People of all ages were present, and they later recorded their experiences.
As soon as Brigham Young spoke, I jumped to my feet, for in every possible degree it was Joseph's voice and his person. In look, attitude, dress, and appearance was Joseph himself personified. And I knew in a moment the spirit and mantle of Joseph was upon him. Benjamin F. Johnson.
Although privately committed to leaving Nauvoo, Brigham and his associates were determined to complete the Nauvoo temple, so that the saints could meet covenants made with the Lord to finish the house and also receive their temple ordinances. Even as they labored to defend themselves and finish the temple, they held meetings to decide when and where to move farther west. Soon after, violence erupted in September 1845. They publicly announced their intention to leave by the following spring. By December, the temple was ready for ordinance work, and by February nearly 6,000 members had received temple blessings therein. The saints had also spent the fall and winter preparing for the Exodus. Committees were appointed, and a Nauvoo covenant was signed, helping to ensure that those with property would assist those without during the Exodus. On February 15, 1846, Brigham, with his family in a wagon, his teams, his cattle, and what possessions he could carry away, left his comfortable home in Nauvoo, his farm, his stores and city lots, the beautiful temple, the graves of his beloved friends, the prophet and patriarch, and ferried across the river to the Iowa side. It was a cold, bitter day. Before him was the Great West, a region little known and explored. Somewhere in this vast region, he hoped to find a place of security, a resting place for the members of the church. Reaching the Missouri River in June, it was determined that there would be no attempt to press on to the Rocky Mountains until the spring of 1847. Brigham Young established his headquarters at what was called Winter Quarters, now Florence, Nebraska, on the Missouri River. More than 50 branches of the church were organized to shepherd the saints in some 80 small LDS communities set up in southwest Iowa for a winter encampment. Brigham personally directed the saints' massive odyssey on the westward trail. This demanding experience taught Brigham Young valuable lessons about men and organization that he used throughout his years of leadership. He also learned anew that when human resources prove inadequate, one must turn in faith to God. That winter, Brigham announced the Word and Will of the Lord, now Section 136 of the Doctrine and Covenants, to help organize the saints and prepare them for the westward trek. Brigham Young set out with an advance group of 143 men, 3 women, and 2 children on April 5, 1847. In what is now western Wyoming, the brethren met James Bridger, a famous Western scout. Bridger did all he could to discourage President Young from trying to form a settlement in the Great Basin. He said that he would give $1,000 for the first bushel of corn grown there. President Young replied, "Wait a year or two, and I will show you what can be done." Brigham Young was quite ill when they arrived in the Salt Lake Valley. Others arrived before him, Orson Pratt, Wilford Woodruff, and Erastus Snow. When they arrived, they lifted their hats into the air and cried Hosanna. Brigham had not told them they were in the right place, but they knew it in their hearts. Once he saw the valley with his own eyes, he announced it as the right place for a new headquarters city and confirmed that the region would be the new gathering place. He also identified the exact spot for a temple. Brigham directed the exploration of the region, helped survey and apportion the land for homes, gardens, and farming, and named the new settlement Great Salt Lake City, Great Basin, North America. On his first day in the valley, Brigham Young stood up on a wagon, the only place that had any elevation on the parched ground, took off his hat, and made a proclamation. His audience was 147 people, 1,000 miles from any sort of civilization.
Attention the whole world. We are here to lay the foundation of a great work to be accomplished in these mountains in the midst of the desert. Right here, the great city will be built. There, the temple will be erected. We will gather the church here. We will bring the poor here from all nations. We will continue our operations and fill these valleys full of Mormons, from the Gulf of California in the south to Hudson Bay on the north. Brigham Young.
On August 26, 1847, he joined the return party to winter quarters. At winter quarters in December 1847, Brigham and other members of the 12 reorganized the first presidency of the church. Their action was sustained by the membership in the log tabernacle at Canesville, now Council Bluffs, Iowa, on December 27, 1847. Heber C. Kimball and Willard Richards were sustained as his counselors. The following April, Brigham, his family, and approximately 3,500 other saints headed for the Salt Lake Valley. Brigham's activities in organizing companies, building bridges, repairing equipment, and training oxen developed abilities that would be in evidence the rest of his life. Brigham Young lived 30 years in the Salt Lake Valley and preached almost every Sunday in the tabernacle. Brigham gave some 500 sermons in Pioneer, Utah, that were recorded word for word by a stenographer. These, all delivered without a prepared text, were well thought out and suggest remarkable mental power. They were well adapted to his audiences. The discourses of Brigham Young were like fireside chats and informal talking things over with his audiences. Interweaving subjects as diverse as women's fashions, the atonement of Jesus Christ, recollections of Joseph Smith, and how to make good bread, Brigham kept his audiences enthralled, amused, and at times in tears, sometimes for hours. He inspired, motivated, taught, and encouraged. As president of the church, Brigham visited as many outlying communities as possible. He appointed bishops for each ward and settlement, and encouraged each ward to provide cultural opportunities for its members, such as dances, theater, music recitals, and above all, schools. He listened to people with complaints, responded to a myriad questions about personal and family affairs as well as religion, and dictated thousands of letters with instruction, counsel, friendly advice, and casual comment about church and national affairs. He was a firm Latter-day Saint leader and a wise counselor. A believer in adapting the newest technology to the advantage of LDS society, Brigham Young contracted in 1861 to build a portion of the transcontinental telegraph line, which was then being constructed from Nebraska to California. He then proceeded to erect the 1,200-mile Deseret telegraph line from Franklin, Idaho, to northern Arizona. This connected a great many of the Mormon villages with Salt Lake City, and through that connection, with the world. He organized cooperatives to handle local merchandising and manufacturing, initiated several new enterprises to develop local resources, promoted relief societies in each ward in order to provide opportunities for self-development, socialization, and compassionate service for women, opened the doors of the University of Deseret, later the University of Utah, for both young men and women, encouraged women to become professionally trained, especially in medicine, and gave women the vote. In 1875, he established Brigham Young Academy, later Brigham Young University. In 1877, Brigham Young College in Logan, Utah, and put in motion a host of academies to follow, including the Latter-day Saints College in Salt Lake City. In 1874, he also promoted the United Order movement in an effort to encourage cooperation and home production and consumption. Brigham Young remained vigorous until his death in August 1877. Just before his death, he dedicated the St. George Temple and launched the full scope of LDS temple ordinances there, something he had anticipated since Nauvoo. He likewise overhauled church organization at every level, formalizing for the first time practices that would characterize the church for nearly a century. Brigham was a well-built, stout, in later years portly man of 5 feet 10 inches, somewhat taller than average for his day. His light brown hair, often described as sandy, had very little gray. Visitors noticed his penetrating blue-gray eyes lined by thin eyebrows. Though he later wore a full beard, Brigham was clean-shaven until the 1850s, when he first sported chin whiskers. His mouth and chin were firm, bespeaking, visitors thought, his iron will. He was generally composed and quiet in manner, but he could thunder at the pulpit. Sometimes called the Lion of the Lord, he could roar when roused. Brigham Young was one of the ablest and most dynamic leaders in American history. He was one of the supremely practical men of his age, a hard-headed, even-keeled, no-nonsense realist who got things done. But for him, all of that was incidental. The important thing was that the people should know what they were doing and why. His orders and recommendations came with full and persuasive explanations. Brigham Young's manner was pleasant and courteous. His dress, generally neat and plain, was often homespun. He combined vibrant energy and self-certainty with deference to the feelings of others and a complete lack of pretension. By the time of his death, Brigham Young had married 27 women, 16 of whom bore him 56 children. He died on August 29, 1877, apparently of peritonitis, the result of a ruptured appendix. I'm Nathan Wright, and you're listening to the Mormon Channel of The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We invite you to listen to new episodes of Legacy Saturdays at 1 o'clock. You can also download any Legacy episode at mormonchannel.org.